Welcome to CodeBreakers, Women in Tech, the podcast where we delve into the world of technology and innovation. Join me, Candice, as I meet inspiring women from the southwest of England's tech ecosystem and dive into the journeys of tech leaders who are breaking barriers and paving the way for future generations. Today, I'm delighted to have Niki Davies on the podcast. Niki is a director and head of marketing for Software Cornwall, event director at Startup Cornwall, president and founder of Junior Chamber Cornwall, and is passionate about creating positive change and opening up the opportunities in tech. Niki, welcome to the show. To kick off, could you tell us a little bit about your own journey in tech?
Of course, yeah. Thanks so much for having me and for that really warm introduction. Mine is a very squiggly journey, like many people. It's a bit of a myth that you wake up one day and say, yeah, I want to work in tech, and then you follow a perfectly outlined curriculum and an education journey that leads you into it. I went to university in Sheffield many moons ago, studying event management with tourism, of all things, which covered a lot of marketing. And then I found my way into live events. I'm a massive music lover. You'll always find me at gigs and festivals. And this was an opportunity to put some of my event management experience together and find my way into a venue, and was sort of stage managing and seeing some really cool bands and having that sort of dream job in my early 20s. There's a lot of tech, obviously, in live music, and I got quite into understanding kind of what the sound engineers were up to at the back of the room and how the lighting rigs were all working. And so I found myself as also the IT person within the entire company in our venue. And I've always sort of been that person growing up. So we were lucky enough to have a computer at home. My dad was always on the computer. We got the internet very early because of his job. So I was in chat rooms. I had an email address. And these are things I just kind of had growing up, had access to, was fortunate enough to have access to. And our school were quite pioneering in terms of having IT rooms. So I was lucky enough to just be in that environment. And I know that plays a huge part in that today. Once I sort of left live music, because after 2 years, it's the best job ever, but you burn out really, really quickly. I then learned that you could kind of work in creative. And my brother's a software engineer. My dad is a physicist. So I've grown up in this environment, but it always seems quite a guy place to be. But actually, my brother founded a company many, many years ago. And once again, I found myself developing all the systems internally, building all the marketing collateral in Adobe Photoshop and all these programs, and then teaching other people how to do it so that I didn't have to do it myself. And then after a few career switches, found myself at a user experience design agency in Sheffield. And this is going back about 12, 15 years. And the agency was about 60 to 70 people. It was independent. And I was one of sort of 9 women in there. That number hasn't actually changed that much today. And we'll come on to that a little bit later. It's actually decreased, unfortunately. But this was the first time I saw this whole digital tech ecosystem in Sheffield, which is a great city for it. And realized that there were all these people creating all these amazing digital products that required other skills, not just software development, but creativity, people who are great with people, marketing, finance, human resources, all of those are required for those tech companies as well. And that's when I kind of, for the first time in my career, thought, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm around like-minded people who know what Zelda is and who played the N64 and still love Mario Kart, and suddenly found my tribe. And that sort of then led me on that career path. I then went on a startup journey, running a tech startup for 6 years in the energy space. So did the whole crowdfunding piece. The company's still going, but we strategically stepped back at the point of raising a Series A, which is the sort of early stage funding. And then lockdown hit, and I was looking for opportunities in Cornwall. And then the Software Cornwall role came up. And now I'm in this whole tech ecosystem, not just within one company or one agency, but actually getting to experience loads of other companies within the Southwest, understanding the tech that they're using, but the people that are involved and all those skills are involved as well. So it's been a squiggly journey, but it took me a really long time to think of myself as a woman in tech, which I think resonates with a lot of people.
Well, it definitely sounds like you've had the journey and dipped your finger in a few pies, as they would say. It's interesting that you touched on the live music aspect. I'm really into music. So it's interesting that you kind of had a similar hobby to start with. You also mentioned there that you were kind of surrounded by computers with your dad and then in your school. How do you think we can get more girls surrounded by the tech? Is it that it's fostered or implemented when they are at school, or do they need to have family and friends that are interested in it?
I think that's a real challenge, but it's probably the most important question. We've been doing education outreach programs since we started in 2014, and it's arguably the most important thing we do, but nobody will fund it. And this is where the problem lies. We have no shortage of young women wanting to join our work experience programs and join our courses and join some of the opportunities that we put in. And I think what's so interesting is we are quite deliberate about the language we use in advertising our work experience. When we do outreach directly with the schools and say we've got a program or something running, often they select the students that then join our programs. And we find that it is young boys who perhaps love gaming or are interested in IT. And therefore the school selection is very, I would argue it's very stereotypical. Some data came in recently from our sister company, Tech Women. And in Cornwall, there were less than 5 young women choosing computer science as a GCSE. They don't even know how many there were, whether there was 1 or 5, because the number was so small, they didn't measure it. That's an issue in terms of actually finding young women who are interested in computer science and want to follow a curriculum path, because we're either not appealing to them properly or we're not nurturing those sparks they find. And it's probable that the curriculum is not gearing up for that. So having those kind of extracurricular things like work experience opportunities, we run code clubs as well, and these are free and open and accessible, and we provide all the gear. Those can really help as well. But part of the problem with tech is you need tech to have a play with tech, and that is coming from a position of privilege. Not everybody has access to a computer at home. Not everybody even has access to a smartphone at home. There are many young people out there that don't know if they're good at tech or not. And what I think we're trying to do is change the career path to find the people who are interested in it, help them find their way into tech in an enthusiastic way. One trend that we're seeing is that we know that schools are underfunded and that teachers are extremely stretched. And what's happening in schools is the PE teacher or the maths teacher are now also being asked to teach IT. The industry, we know, pays way more in technology than schools pay. So if you are a gifted systems administrator or IT teacher and you can teach, actually you're going to get paid double the amount that you're paid in school if you go into industry. And this is one problem that we're creating by not paying teachers what they're worth. The other issue we've got is our education system has to pick what we're going to teach, and it has to deliver a breadth of courses. For me as a person in tech, I would really love it if they really honed in on coding skills and tech or communication. I think finance and budgeting should be taught from schools. There's a lot missing, but I appreciate we also have to have a blanket one size fits all, because we can't cater for outliers and all the other skills that people have. And we know the education system doesn't suit everybody. Academia is not for everybody, but we still have to have one system. I think what's difficult when you're working in the tech industry is, and I remember this from my own experience at school, I had no idea that software development was even a career. I had no idea that digital marketing was even a career. And at Software Cornwall, we last summer ran 5 new work experience opportunities on top of our Mission to Mars one that we already do. We did digital marketing, IoT, web development, and data science. And we discovered it afterwards. And actually, if we'd renamed digital marketing influencer marketing, we'd have had a massive uptake. And I think it's trying to connect their experiences at school and actually what they're associating with certain roles with what is actually available in industry. And so trying to show young people that actually, if you really love that, you can make a ton of money in it as well. That's the ideal scenario, but without time and funding for us to be able to go into schools and showcase these things to young people, that's not going to happen.
I remember when I was younger, I did a variety of different work experiences, a week here, a week there. I knew that I wanted to be in business, but I didn't quite know what side of business. But again, I was privileged enough to be able to have the contacts to be able to do that work experience. But like you say, not everybody has that opportunity. And I think, like you say, it's finding those opportunities for those people to access. I guess moving on from the initial spark into IT and how we can get women in, what about the women that are in the tech industry already? How can they develop into leadership roles?
I suppose the question is more, what can companies do to support women into leadership roles? Because I think there's no shortage of appetite of women who want to excel in their careers, but there is a shortage of the environment to enable them to do that. There was a 2022 Women in the Workplace report by McKinsey, and it touched on some of the challenges that women are facing. Women are still so underrepresented in tech and engineering jobs. And in the report, 32% of women said that they are still the only female engineer in their entire company. 32% of women, that's huge. That's no different from where I was 12 years ago. I think we had one woman in our engineering team. The number of women in engineering roles since 2018 has now dropped by 2%. A lot of the report then talks about the biases and the equality issues that they're facing, because if the only gender in the room is male, then it will default to male. And if that environment doesn't happen by accident, that environment has to be created deliberately by leadership.
Mm-hmm.
If then in leadership we have a male-dominated leadership, then it's unlikely that voice is going to be heard, and therefore women are helped in an environment that is going to help them excel into those leadership roles. They do exist. This isn't all doom and gloom. I've worked in some of those environments with amazing male leaders who know how to advocate and know how to help women into tech. But even recently, I'm having conversations with women in the industry who are the only women in a company and are trying to increase diversity within their teams and are struggling to get buy-in from leadership because it's not seen as an issue. But it's not seen as an issue until somebody who's in a decision-making progress has either experienced it or has enough empathy to understand and listen to what is going on internally. But if that environment's not created, then that's really challenging. The same report talks about getting young women into tech and then into leadership positions. And the resounding message, particularly among Gen X and getting women into these companies, is that it's no longer enough to hire and offer salary and pension and some holidays. Those things are default. We should be offering them anyway. They're not perks. Those are your legal rights. What Gen X is really caring about, and what women in particular are saying, is they want to know what the commitment is to diversity, inclusion, and equality within that workplace. They want values-driven and purpose-driven companies to work with. They want to be sold to. They want to know what's in it for them. What are the projects they're going to be working on? How are they going to make a difference in the world? And what is the company purpose? And does it align with their own values? And this is becoming a norm. We're hearing now in the tech community that candidates are asking for references from the business that they're working with, from other members of staff, to find out what it's like to work there. Mm-hmm. Glassdoor is one of the biggest recruitment pages now because people want to know what it's like to work at the tech company and they want to hear it from the employees themselves. Mm-hmm. And this culture that will continue and hopefully will then positively foster more inclusion and diversity within tech, because actually the power really is moving to the candidate and the people within the company, less so the leadership. And it's up to leadership to recognise that if they want to attract the best staff, then they have to put employee well-being and purpose at the forefront, and not just have values as a marketing piece on the website, but actually understand how to lead by those values. Because equally, our company should be able to hire and fire based on those values. There are enough brave people to say what they need, but it takes somebody at the top or enough voices internally for that to change. And that's a really, really difficult culture to foster, even within a very small business. Mm-hmm. The reality of a lot of UK businesses, and particularly in the Southwest, is our sort of average company size isn't in the thousands. We don't necessarily have that infrastructure. So in theory, it should be more malleable. We should be able to create these things. And I think we are. And the more work those people in tech, men and women, do, then this will get better. But it is still a problem. We are still losing women in engineering jobs, in tech roles, but also in leadership as well.
It's an interesting topic for myself, because I see myself as quite an ambitious woman, and I've been lucky enough to join the TimeWave team just as they're experiencing quite a lot of growth, and I'm really excited about where my TimeWave journey is going to take me. Our managing director, Jordan, he's very big on allowing me to try and get as many women talking about tech, and that's why we're kind of doing this podcast as well. I'm very aware of all the challenges that women face, not just in tech leadership roles, but across the board. But I'm lucky enough to be in a company that is trying to mentor me and guide me to hopefully a leadership role. But I am aware that there's a lot of work that needs to be done for women to allow them to get to the positions that they're in. I mean, just my experience, a lot of my bosses have been men. It was interesting that you were talking there about the candidates and them having to kind of see whether the company is right for them. There was a piece of advice that I was given not too long ago. Just as much as the company's interviewing you, you're interviewing the company. You have to make sure that your values align with what they're offering you, and you're 100% correct. You need to be able to ask the people that are working at the company what they like about the company, not just the people that are interviewing you.
Yeah, and to be honest, the Women in the Workplace one from McKinsey, I cite that a few times, and it's saying in here, young women care deeply about the opportunity to advance. You are a case study here. More than 2/3 of women under 30 want to be senior leaders. Young women are also more likely than current women leaders to say they're increasingly prioritizing flexibility and company commitment to well-being and diversity, equality, inclusion. And that's data-based. This isn't, verbatim. You've just shown the exact case study that this is talking about. You want to be at the top and you will get there. And, thankfully you've got, was it Jordan?
Jordan, yeah.
Brilliant. More Jordans, please. So part 2 of this is that tech has a talent crisis. In fact, the Tech Southwest report said that access to talent was the biggest crisis facing tech companies across the Southwest. One of the ways we can tackle that is actually we are not short of people banging on the door trying to get into tech roles. Again, our sister company, Tech Women, have launched their Digital Uplift program. And within less than a year, not only have they taken over 50 women through their program, but it's already oversubscribed. They're taking bookings for the next cohort, and 100 women will have gone through their program. There was one woman who was a GP, went through the Digital Uplift program, then joined the Software Cornwall Gateway to Tech program, which is our career switch program. She now works in the AI department at Southwest Water. Their program's 8 weeks, ours is 8 weeks. So within 16 weeks, she has found her way into a tech and engineering department with Southwest Water. And we're not short of talent. What we are short of is companies able to facilitate onboarding that talent. If we can find those individuals that do have the aptitude for learning and the thirst for learning, the interest and the spark that software development gives them, most of Software Cornwall members tell us that they can teach that person to code in the language and give them the habits that they need within their business. But they can't teach somebody to show up, to work on time, communicate with the rest of the team, and not be difficult to work with. And that's where we have to plug this talent crisis. We can get more women into the workplace, but ultimately it comes down to flexibility. I've just come back from Slush in Helsinki in Finland, which is Europe's biggest startup conference. This year they had 12,000 startups and entrepreneurs across the 2 days. There was a woman called Tracy Young. So she's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Tiger Eye. Her previous startup sold for £875 million in 2018. So this is a woman that knows what she's talking about. She has 3 children under 5. Her entire team are remote. Slack is her office, and she manages over 1,000 people within her company completely remotely. Her whole thing was, she still has to look after a lot of the childcare. She still recognizes that women are carrying the weight of childcare, home care. We're a big part of the sandwich generation, which means we're looking after elderly relatives, looking after children as well. Childcare is a massive blocker for women returning to work. The focus is on trying to get women back to working, assuming that we don't want to be there. And actually we do. We're driven, like you've just said, Candice, you want to be in a leadership role. You've got aspirations to be in a career and be in a leadership role. I have too. I want to be at work, but equally, I can't work whilst looking after a 2-year-old. It's about companies offering genuine flexible working, offering potential job share and potential part-time work. We have ways to communicate and document coming out of every orifice. So there is no excuse not to be able to have some sort of job share process. It means just getting on top of those things internally and getting your house in order so that you can open up your workforce to more women and people who have needs.
And I guess it boils down to the topic that we come back to quite often in this podcast. It's all about culture, and it's having a good company culture that people align to, that allows them to be able to, shine as such, but also have that flexibility to be able to do what they need to do in their personal lives. It's a big topic that drives quite a lot of what we're discussing today, encouraging women into the workplace. How do we get them in there? How do we retain them? How do we get them to be in leadership roles? It's all stems around the culture aspect. What do you think are some of the key takeaways for some of our listeners today?
If you are in a tech company or in a leadership position already, definitely that advocacy piece and making sure that you really take time to work on your business and look internally about what you are asking candidates, what you are offering them, sorry. So if you can do flexible working, be really explicit about what that looks like. It's really important to publish your salary I'm not even going to try and get into the gender pay gap. It's real. Just Google it. And women are quite often put off if the salary isn't included in the job role. So that's number 1 and 2. If you offer flexibility, make sure that's there as well. Number 3 is if you are recruiting and you can offer flexible working, or you could offer a part-time job or job share, put that on the job application. We've spoken to a lot of companies that in hindsight say, oh yeah, no, that could have been a job share, but nobody asked. Most women won't apply for a job unless they meet about 90% of the requirements for the job. But if there is an option, publicize it, and then take a look at your internal company values and culture and really look at whether you are living up to those as well. I think if you're in a parent or guardian position and you see a spark from a young person, your library has huge amounts of resources that you can borrow for free. So you can go and borrow a BBC microbit from a library, which is an amazing tool for children to help them learn to code. And those are completely accessible. It's free to join your library. I had a chat with a neighbour who lives near me, and he's got an 8-year-old daughter, and she just loves tech. She's playing games all the time, and he's trying to find a way to help her find a way in. And we had a chat, and within days he'd gone and got a microbit, and then now is joining our code clubs, which are also free. So if you are lucky enough to have a local tech cluster like Software Cornwall, or you know Tech Southwest have an amazing network of clusters all across the Southwest, do tap them up and find out what they do locally, because if they don't know, they might know somebody who does, who can help young people kind of get access to those. Then if you are a woman trying to find your way into tech, you'll probably feel like an imposter a lot of the time. That's completely normal. We all feel like it most of the time. I think imposter syndrome is rife, but you are where you belong. And if you don't feel like you're in the right place, there are other companies with CEOs like Jordan, because ultimately businesses need to grow, and they want growth. The only way they're going to grow is if they either grow people internally or if they grow the number of people. So they need you. And if you're enthusiastic about tech, then you have a place in tech, but it's important that you find the right company. And that's often easier said than done. But it is possible. There are some great companies out there. And, you know, once you're in, open the door for others as well.
Great, amazing. Thank you very, very much for your time today. Niki, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really insightful podcast for myself, and it's definitely going to be insightful to a lot of listeners out there. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Join me again next time on Spotify, Apple Podcast or YouTube to meet our next inspiring guest and to delve into their journey into tech.